Depending on when you apply pepper to your steak does have a significant effect on how that flavor, or more specifically the piperine flavor compound, turns out. Now, after experimenting for myself, I think I'm now a believer in putting some pepper on my steak after it has been grilled or seared. However, that is not due to the simplified rationale that pepper burns if you put it on before searing. Let's talk about that. So probably the main reason you will see online of why people say or think you should add pepper to your steak after it has been seared or grilled is that if you add it before, the pepper will burn at high heat, which makes it turn bitter and unpleasant tasting. Now, that is correct in that burnt pepper does not taste great. I put some coarse ground pepper on a cast iron, burned them, then tried them, and there are definitely some bitter notes compared to the fresh stuff. However, it's not that intense. If I had made this completely blackened, yeah, it would taste awful. But this is darker than I've ever seen on a steak, and I mean, if the pepper ended up completely black, I bet that steak exterior was likely burned too. My point is here that pepper doesn't burn that easily when it's on a steak. You see, several factors can affect the potential burning, including the grind of the peppercorn, the temperature of the heat source, the length of time on the heat source, and the moisture on the steak. For example, a coarse grind has less surface area than a fine grind, so there is less chance of burning. Searing indoors in a pan versus whatever insane contraption Kenji and Adam Savage whipped up that seared in 20 seconds will have an effect. And additionally, there is moisture on the steak, which lowers the temperature right around the pepper that you add it. So what I'm saying is that if pepper burned that easy and tasted very bitter, people would probably never put pepper on their steak before searing it in the first place, and that's clearly not the case. I've never done it before doing this video, and these Instagram polls shows a lot of other people are in the same boat. Also, steak au poivre would probably not be a thing. Okay, so you may be asking, what is the reason why I may want to put pepper on my steak after searing? Well, the much more important reason, in my opinion, on why you want to apply pepper after grilling or searing is due to the potential degradation of the flavor compounds, specifically piperine. As mentioned in On Food and Cooking, the point of using herbs and spices is to retain their characteristic aroma compounds. This is what makes pepper smell and taste like pepper versus what makes cinnamon smell and taste like cinnamon. Turns out these aroma compounds are highly volatile, meaning they get lost fairly easily. For example, piperine is the signature pungent chemical in black pepper that causes the slight irritation and pain that we love in those peppercorns. Why do we love it? Well, again from On Food and Cooking, it is noted that this could be due to the brain releasing pain-relieving chemicals that leave a pleasant glow when the burning fades, or maybe it's just like our taste buds riding a roller coaster. The piperine that gives us those feelings, though, is highly volatile. In fact, it is noted that if black pepper is overexposed to light during storage, it will lose its pungency because the light energy rearranges the piperine to form the nearly tasteless molecule isochavasine. Additionally, as we learned from my spices video, flavor compounds also can react with oxygen, moisture, heat, and light. So when we add pepper to a steak, we're opening it up to all of those outside factors, and clearly it's going to have an effect of some sort. Now this is all good in theory, but in practice, how big of a difference does the timing of the pepper make? Well, you can do a pretty basic experiment yourself. I took 3 steaks, salted them ahead of time, then reverse seared to 125 degrees Fahrenheit before searing until I got a good crust on each side. The only difference? How I applied the pepper. For one, I added 1% pepper by weight before adding it to the oven for the reverse sear. One I peppered after it came out of the oven, but before searing on the pan. And the last one I peppered after searing. I sliced them open, and here are my thoughts after tasting. So pretty self-explanatory test here. Really, I'm just trying to focus on the flavor of the pepper, or the piperine flavor compound, to see how that comes through in the various preparations. I've got milk and water to swish down between each test so I can start with hopefully a pretty clean palate. But let's start here, and I did overcook these a little bit, but again, not that important for this test. So what we're gonna do is just go one by one down the line. All right, first one done. Let's move on. I'm going to talk about them after I try all of them. All right, second one done. Let's go to the last one. So this is actually quite interesting to me, and I've never tried this before, so I wasn't sure how different these would actually be. Like, I understand the theory behind it, but I will say these two, not that much difference between them. A little bit, I would say this pepper comes through a little bit forward, but it's more the aroma of pepper and kind of the flavor of it. This one, on the other hand, you actually get the piperine slight irritation that gives us that like little bit of spice feeling in your mouth, that little tingly feeling on your tongue. That really comes through with the one that was peppered afterwards. I didn't get any of that actual physical kind of, you know, tingle in your mouth from these two. I got the flavor of pepper, but I didn't actually get that tingle of, you know, that peppercorns give you. So for me, as someone who really likes that experience in your mouth, if I want the flavor of pepper to come through when I'm making a steak, I am definitely from now on going to be adding pepper after my steak. You know, if I was mixing in things like with butter, garlic, and kind of wanted the pepper to be a little bit maybe more balanced with those ingredients, I would probably do this preparation right here. I mean, really both these, there wasn't a huge difference that I found between these two. So just kind of think about how you want the pepper to play, but there is no question that adding pepper after it has been grilled makes a really big difference. And it's really because of all those factors that we talked about and how the flavor compounds change once they're, you know, exposed to and react with those various elements, the moisture, the oxygen, the light, and so on. So yeah, that was actually a very interesting taste test. So to wrap up this video, I'll give you kind of my final conclusion on how to pepper your steak. So in conclusion, here's my unofficial guide on when to pepper steak. First, always start with fresh ground pepper in order to start with the most flavor. 2, a coarse grind will be less prone to burning than a fine grind, in addition to a couple of those other factors we talked about. As far as when to apply the pepper, it's all a matter of how much pippering you want to come through. If using an extended salting or cooking method like reverse sear or sous vide, applying the peppercorns in the beginning will result in the most flavor compound reaction and thus deterioration. However, you can likely increase the amount of pepper and that might save you. For a nicely balanced pepper flavor, add it right before searing. The peppercorns will adhere to the steak and can be used to create a crust, and you might get a little bit of that irritation depending on how much you use and the grind of your corns. Now, for the utmost pepper-forward flavor, wait until you pull it off after the grill to crank those corns to really get that hit of pepper that we know and love. And there is a fourth choice here too, is to do both. For example, you could use a coarser grind on the sear to create the crust and some of the aromas beforehand, and then follow that with a fine grind to release the pippering for just a touch of pain with the pleasure of the steak.